I think we'll go ahead and get started again. All righty. So this portion is all about how you train this information. I hope you found that last bit of information, the Know Your Rights training itself, powerful and important to want to share with people. And so you folks stayed on the line because you want to share, which I really appreciate, because we need folks all over the country doing this. We need folks that are that can learn your laws in your area, that look like the people that need to learn this information, that you're ready to share it with. So I'm so pleased that you all are here, and I really thank you for your willingness to share this important and vital information. So let's do it. Okay. All righty. So what we're going to talk about a little bit is about different kinds of learners that you might deal with, and some of the learning styles and the training styles. Talk a little bit about some lesson plans and putting that together and different activities. I want to give you some ideas about some of the kinds of training materials that are available from us and from other organizations. And then I want to talk a little bit about how you manage your classroom and your folks. These days it's like a virtual classroom, but sometime soon we'll be going back to in-person stuff. So that can be kind of important to talk about. Okay. So one of the things that I want to talk about first is kind of adult learners versus children. What we know, let me ask you this question. Who here has sent a kid to kindergarten? Anybody? Unmute yourselves, you guys. There's hardly any of us here. It's only about 20 of us here. So just unmute yourself. We'll have a good conversation. So Sarah, you got your hand up, and Robin, you got your hand up?
No, I'm sorry, I don't have any kids.
Okay. Sarah, what about you? Did you send some kids to a kid to kindergarten?
Yes.
Yes. So what happened when you did that? Your kid was real excited, right? They spent the whole summer, right? Getting their wardrobe together and all their little school supplies. Okay. All their little school supplies and putting them in a little backpack. And they're so excited, right? About going to school. Because for kids, school is about new experiences. Unfortunately, along the way, as we are in school longer and longer, even if we have good experiences, we get kind of beat down a little bit. And when you become an adult, you get pretty nervous about new experiences. So kids are eager to learn new things because it's about exposure to new experiences. For adults, we tend to be a little bit more focused on, am I going to get embarrassed? We bring some baggage with us, right? Maybe bad school experiences, things like that. Are we going to have a bad experience? Are we going to be embarrassed? Are we going to, not do well or something like that? And also, adults do not as readily grasp brand new information as kids do. We just don't. What we need when we're learning is to have our new information tied in some fashion to old information. So remember how I just said, hey, is anybody here, ever sent a kid to kindergarten? When I was doing that, I was trying to draw on a common experience that we might all understand and tie a new piece of information to that old piece of information. See how I did that? Kind of slick, right? Hopefully a little slick anyway, maybe not that slick, but you get the point, right? You want to, any kind of new information, you want to tie it to old information. So, I talk to people about, most adults have driven a car. Most adults, understand, or maybe have been stopped by the police, whatever it is, you want to try to tie that new information to something that a person's already experienced. So that's one of the big deals about adult versus child learners. And the thing about it is you might be working with different age groups of people. I have taught this class, this particular training, to I probably have done more than 100 of these trainings, probably well more than that. And I have taught this to lots of adults, but plenty of middle schoolers, high schoolers, and I've even taught kids as young as 5. Now, when you teach kids as young as 5, you have to think to yourself, what's age appropriate for that child, right? And so for little kids as young as 5, I'm not trying to scare them or talk about violence or anything like that. What I talk to them about is, if somebody knocks on your door, what are you going to do about it? And then it's like, we're going to let the adults we live with answer the door. That was as far as I took it for 5-year-olds, because that's all they can tolerate. And their attention span is about, 27 seconds anyway. So, so I gave them what they could deal with, right? But it was really weird because I do a lot of these classes for Little Earth. And when I do these, and they have like these after school programs, when I do them, for some reason, they want me to do the 5-year-olds. But I just took it to a very little level where it's just like, if adults if somebody knocks on your door, who should answer the door? And that was enough for 5-year-olds. That's all they can tolerate. And then they're up running around. That's it. So you get my point about, like, really think about the age of the people you're working with, think about the characteristics of the people you're working with and how open they are to new information, how you can tie that new information to old information if you're dealing with adults, older, a little bit older learners. Okay, so we're going to talk about some learning styles. Now, one of the things in kind of educational theory and so forth is that there's a little debate about this whole thing about learning styles. But I've been in adult ed for many years. I have almost a master's degree in adult ed, and I like this kind of way to think about adult learning. About learning, because it sort of helps you really understand how to approach people. So some people, about 30% are what we call auditory learners. They learn by listening. They're intensely listening, right? Some are visual learners, and that's probably the biggest percentage of people. About 65% are visual learners. I taught in healthcare for a lot of years, and in healthcare, I was teaching nurses and other healthcare folk, and more like 85% are visual learners in that field. I mean, people that need to take notes. If you're a note taker, you're a visual learner. You're a person that wants to, if you're somebody who never takes a note because you got to listen to every word, you're an auditory learner. But if you're a person that takes notes, I know I'm a visual learner. I take notes, and from my notes, I can literally remember my notes. When I get ready to take a test, I can remember my notes right off of, and that helps me answer the test questions. But, it just depends. There's a small percentage of people that have to put their hands on things. They're called kinesthetic learners. So they learn by manipulating objects and putting things on their, putting their hands on things and stuff like that, moving around. And so sometimes when we educate people, especially teachers working with younger, like little kids or middle school kids or whatever, and they're dealing with the kids that move all around and squirming around, and they go like, oh, something's wrong with these kids. No, they're not really that. It's they need to move in order to learn. And we have to be able to work with people who have that learning style. So that's, think about that. And I'll come back to why this is important in a second. Now, training styles, okay? There's 3 things that you can think about. One, cognitive is like theory, right? What you think of like head, theory, okay? So I'll tell you, like, okay, here's the legal thing about why this thing is, why you should use these magic words, and that's the legal theory behind it, and that's the cognitive, the things that address like what we're going to do and why we're going to do it, that kind of thing, okay? Affective is where we look to change attitudes. It's through emotions. So have you guys ever seen these TV commercials that come on late at night, and it's like, the dog is out in the winter cold and these animals need to be rescued and blah, blah. You've seen those ads, right? What do you think the purpose of those ads is? Oh, y'all, unmute yourselves at home. What's that?
Get to your emotions.
Yeah, it's to get your emotions. And you know why they're going to get your emotions? Not because they just want to make you sad or whatever, because they're trying to manipulate you into doing something that you don't normally do. Like, you don't normally give your money away, right? Most people don't. Maybe some people walk down the street handing off their $20 bills or whatever, but most people don't give money away. They're trying to motivate you through an affective ad to do something that isn't natural for you, which is to give your money away. They're trying to get money from you, okay? That's okay. I mean, they're probably using it for a good purpose. I'm not beating up on them, but they're using an affective approach to try to get you to do things. We can also, like in nursing, we use affective a lot to talk about our patients and their right to dignity and this and that. And we try to change the nurse's behavior or the potential nurse's behavior to do certain things based on an affective thing. Like I'm trying to say to you, now, what would that patient want you to do, and things like that, right? The third thing is what's called manipulative, and not manipulative like emotionally manipulative, but manipulative like skills and stuff like that, how you use your hands. So if I'm going to teach somebody, I'll give you an example from my world, which probably might not have too much relevance to yours, but if I'm going to teach somebody how to start an IV, an intravenous line, okay, I'm going to teach them all about, here's the theory behind it, here's all the safety stuff like that. And then I'm not probably going to do too much affective, with that, because it's a skill. And then I'm going to put you on a plastic arm. We use these, plastic arms these days, right? So we don't have to stick actual people a whole lot. I'm going to put you on a plastic arm and let you practice starting an IV a whole mess of times until you get so good at it that now you can practice on each other, right? So we'll start you with the thinking part of it, and here's the theory behind it, and here's what we're doing, and here's why you do it in this direction, and here's what to look for if it's a problem, and blah, 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 blah. And now put your hands on it. So these are a couple of ways that training styles. What works the best for people is, I want to come back to here. What works the best for people is if you incorporate learning styles and teaching styles together. And if you cross all of these areas, okay, which is a little hard for us to do in a virtual world. But when I'm teaching, I'll give you an example. When I'm teaching middle schoolers, which we do a lot of middle school and high school, we have a game, and it's made with balls. We actually put the 4 sets of magic words on these balls, these little miniature foam footballs. And then we put a big basket in the middle, and I put people into teams. And when I'm going through this stuff and we're doing practices of different scenarios, they have to, within their team, they have to find the ball that has the right magic word. And then so this team gets the blue balls, and this one gets the red balls, and this one gets the yellow balls. And they have to throw the right ball into the basket. And whichever team gets the right ball in the basket first, that whole team gets some candy. So see how that's giving them a kinesthetic way to address a cognitive skill? I'm making a manipulation for them. So I'm looking at different ways.
Absolutely.
I'm writing things on the board. I'm putting things in their hands. I'm thinking about different ways I can access all 3 of these learning styles. So everybody in the room gets what they came for. And I'm thinking about all the training styles that I can use to reach those 3 learning styles. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. Anybody got any questions about that or anything? Because I'm going pretty fast here.
So Michelle,
Yeah.
something that I've always thought about would be really cool to have in a know your rights scenario, maybe something that could be possible after COVID, is to do actual role playing with a person in a uniform costume. Because as much as we can talk about these concepts and say them sitting in our own houses, it is such a different experience when an
Yes.
actual uniformed person tells you something, because you have all this backload of societal pressure built up, and it's
Yep.
an extremely different thing to actually practice this kind of thing in real life. So anything I think that can be done to counterbalance that to a small degree would be a really interesting thing to be able to bring into this kind of training.
I love it. I think that's a great idea. I do a lot of know your rights trainings with undocumented people. We work with Asamblea de Derechos Civiles, and we do know your rights trainings where some of the Asamblea folks work with the undocumented people, and I work with the documented people and the white folks and whatever in the room to teach them how to intervene if there's an ICE raid, right? And about people's rights and all this stuff. And so we'll have the groups separate and we'll do the trainings, and then we bring everybody together for lunch. And what they don't know is while we have them having lunch, we've already figured out we stage an ICE raid right in the middle of lunch. And we do this, and people, what it does is, and we've already got it all set up, like who's going to be the person, the family that's going to get grabbed and all that. We already have all that done up ahead. So, but we make it as realistic, and we have people wearing uniforms. We make it as realistic as we can. And we then get to see who freezes, who acts, how they act, because we give people different roles and different things that they should do, depending on their level of willingness to take risk and things like that. And we do exactly that kind of thing. And it is freaking magical. you guys. It really works. That might be too much for some folks to do, but I think it's a very good, I love your idea. And it has worked very well for us in those trainings around ice raids. So that's been a very good, a very good practice. So I agree with you. I think that's a great idea. And then when he's doing that, what is he doing? What is he doing when he's doing that, you guys? He's drawing on all of these learning styles, right? To convey all of this stuff using our training styles. Fair enough? Okay, ready to go on to the next? Go ahead.
Feel like since we're talking about ICE, it might be a good time to mention that they can write their own warrants and sign their own warrants that look like warrants but aren't warrants.
They aren't real warrants. I know that's one of the things we teach about is how to tell a real warrant from a ICE fake. The ones that you're talking about that are the fake ones are really called administrative warrants. And we talk about that all the time. We have big giant posters. That's one of the things to do too. We want to make sure people see what these things look like, right? Can't just talk about them. So we have big giant posters of an administrative warrant versus a judicial warrant, which is the kind that they actually can act on, and we deal with all this kind of stuff where they try to manipulate their way into people's houses and all of this stuff like that. So, and we practice all the ways to respond to all those things. So, but thank you for raising that because that's important. All right. So now here's one of the things that I'm going to tell you as somebody who's been teaching for about 30 something years. Nothing sucks more than being unprepared. That is the worst feeling in the world when you get in front of a group of people and you're like, you don't want that. I will tell you that, like I told you before, I have taught CPR. I've taught professional level CPR. I've taught advanced cardiac life support. I've taught, all these different kinds of, first aid and first responder and all this stuff, right? I have lessons plans for all of this stuff. And even though I used to teach CPR twice a week, every week, 52 weeks a year, I had a lesson plan that I followed. You know why? Because when you teach that many times over and over again, you can easily skip something if you're not watching your lesson plan. So I just have it in front of me and I don't have it written out in detail. I have bullet points, and you might even have seen me leaning over a little bit here and flipping this page or whatever, because I do that with my own for this class too. I've got notes, I've got a lesson plan. I knew what I was going to say to you when we started tonight. And I have, it doesn't hurt to have a PowerPoint to kind of back you up as a lesson plan. Part of the reason I use PowerPoints is because we are doing this on Zoom. If we only talked, that would be great for the auditories, but all you visuals would lose your minds. You need something to see, okay? Visuals like something to see in front of them. So this is part of why I've got a PowerPoint, but also it helps me stay on track. And it's part of my lesson plan. I've got notes that go with this PowerPoint that I use to make sure that I stay on task. Okay. Really, really important. We have a lesson plan that's written out in detail of everything I talked about tonight. And then Know Your Rights. And I'm happy to share that with you. We are not proprietary about our stuff at all. You can absolutely have our lesson plan. It's spelled out. I can give you an outline lesson plan, which is one of the things I did send you. I can give you a detailed lesson plan if you want it. I'm happy to share that with you. And like I said, you need to customize that for your local laws. And I'll tell you something else. Are you nervous about speaking in public, you guys? Are you nervous about this in any way?
Not at all.
Not at all? Great, great. So you're used to doing this kind of stuff, right?
Yeah, definitely.
How about other people? I bet people in the room, I bet there are some people in the room that are nervous. Erica, are you nervous about it? You raised your hand.
I said a little bit, like I used to do it a lot. It's been a long time because as a white ally, it's not really my place to be speaking anymore. So I'm a little rusty. So I get a little nervous, but I used to be really good at it.
Okay. Well, I think if people are asking you to give this training, this is a very good training to give. I do a lot of training in the movement for, we do martial training, and I teach Know Your Rights as part of the martial training as well. So I do a lot of martial training so that we have people to go out and keep us safe when we're out here protesting, right? We need that.
I have the same martial training that gets you licensed in Minnesota, or?
No, there's no licensing for martial training. I'm talking about marshals at protests. With JFA and stuff. I do some of their training for them. So
yeah, there was something that we looked at that BRAP looked at that was like legally you're now designated or trained as a marshal, but
never heard of that.
yeah, I know.
Yeah, not the
Okay.
kind of marshaling.
And I don't know if
just
I want the
think
state
protest
have
marshal.
given me a license for anything like that anyway. What's that?
I was thinking, I think she means like marshaling police. I think you're talking about like protest marshaling. Like I think that's mostly like a volunteer kind of thing. You just get training for it, man. And I don't think it's like a pay or kind of thing like that.
Yeah,
No,
I would agree with that.
We're talking about the same thing. Yeah, there is like a state training in Minnesota that you can to be a traffic marshal. Like
Oh wow.
I do motorcycle marshaling for protests is
Right.
my connection to this community. So yeah, it's weird, but it exists.
I had no
Wow.
idea. I'm not
Yeah,
gonna
wow,
go
I
into
didn't
it
know
because I
either.
don't need
Wow.
the state to tell me what I can do. So
Wow.
yeah, interesting. Okay, so making your lesson plan. First thing you want to be thinking about, you know the information you need to cover, right? And then you need to think to yourself, now, how do I want to cover this information? Who's my audience? What's their ages? What's their interests? Can I come up with a lesson plan, use my basic lesson plan and manipulate it in a way that makes it work for the audience that I have? Is it mostly English speakers? Is there going to be translation? All of those questions come up when you think about who is my audience? Are they young folk? All that kind of stuff like that. And I want somebody to silence themselves so I don't have to hear that. Okay. And rehearse the hell out of it. Okay. So that you are comfortable. Do it in front of a smaller group or whatever you need to do. Rehearse it because it make you feel 50 times more comfortable if you've done it a few times. You can almost always tell a new instructor because they kind of look like deer in headlights. Rehearse it. Okay. Now, one of the things that I did with you guys that you probably saw with the magic word, right? There's a nice little kind of way of teaching people. Whoever's got your thing unmuted, could you kind of mute it for me, please? Thank you. Okay. All right. It's a method of repetition that helps you to glue things in people's heads. And it's called I say, we say, you say. Okay. So basically what I say to when I was doing it with you guys, I was like, okay, so here's this magic word. Officer, I do not consent to a search, right? Whatever the magic words are. Then I'll say, okay, you guys say it with me. Officer, and then we say together, officers, I do not consent to a search. Then I say, okay, now, cop wants to search you. What are you going to say? And then I wait for you to say it so I can check your comprehension. But it's I say, we say, you say. It's a way to really get people to glue the knowledge down. And so that's one of the tricks that I use that I think that works well for the kinds of stuff we're talking about. That's a little bit of rote memorization. And then, of course, lots of other kinds of activities. Andrew talked about one of them. And, we do a lot when I do these things, usually I do these, I co-teach this with a guy named Dorian. And he and I will plan this stuff out ahead where basically, one of us will be the bad driver, the other one will be the cop or whatever. We do these different kind of demos. What I will tell you, people talk about role plays. A lot of people, especially kind of the Zoomers and some of these folks like that, do not like role play. There's a lot of people and people get embarrassed about role plays. So a lot of times they don't really like role plays. So instead I do demonstrations instead of role plays. Like it'll be like, I'll be the cop and, and Dorian will be pretending to be the driver. And then, woo, okay, what should Dorian do now? That kind of thing, right? Where he does stuff. And sometimes we do stuff like this. He'll do it wrong. Or if I'm the person, I'll do it wrong. And then we'll say, well, what did that person do wrong? That's a good way to get people to do some critical thinking about, well, wait a minute. You just opened the door and got out of the car. What, of course you don't do that, right? And we have conversations about why you don't do it and all that stuff. So these are good things. I have a whole list of discussion questions for adults and another list for younger people that we do sometimes if there's more time, and the teacher especially usually like this, they have discussion questions like group discussion questions and stuff. I mentioned about games that we play. I love using games for the middle schoolers. They have too much energy to just sit So I like having these balls that they can all throw into the bucket in the middle, and then they win candy, which they love, by the way. So I always bring lots of big bag of candy, and hand out candy to these folks, and they think that's a blast, and that kind of thing. And then the other thing is, nobody likes a test. So I don't give tests, I give Quizlets. Quizlets are just little check-ins where I find out what the person remembers by just saying, little scenarios like we did at the end. I said, here's your quiz, everything like that. Oh, the cop comes to your house and says, let me in. What are you going to say, right? That's our way to just check your comprehension. Fair enough? So little other kinds of activities. Think about what makes some sense. Okay. Now, I want to talk to you about training materials. We have a ton of training materials. We helped to finance a video that is by a group called Flex Your Rights. And Flex Your Rights is a fantastic organization that has a lot of great Know Your Rights training materials. And what particularly they have 2 different versions of the video. The first version of the video is like their older version. It's more geared to like kind of white teenagers and more relationship to like drug kind of things or whatever. The second video that they have is I love this video. If you feel like I want people to get this knowledge, but I'm too nervous to do it myself, just plug this video in, set up an event at the library or wherever, and plug this video in and let people watch it and talk about it afterwards. And it is a Know Your Rights training, pretty much head to tail, by an African-American, a pretty famous African-American New York attorney. I'm trying to remember his name right now, but he does a great job with the video, and you can literally just plug and play and you'll be fine. If you're too nervous to do this yourself, at least the first time, plug and play. Let them do it. We've got great handouts. As we mentioned before, we have the same Know Your Rights materials in English, Spanish, Hmong, and Somali, because those are the main languages that are spoken here. I know that there are some people that have this in Chinese and other kinds of, Mandarin Chinese and other kinds of languages and other places. Our materials are our own. They have our name on them, but the information itself is not proprietary. You're certainly welcome to it. We've got various scenarios, suggested scenarios and discussion questions. We have a Know Your Rights comic book. It was not written by us. It was written by the Midnight Special Legal Collective. Unfortunately, that legal collective is no longer together, but they gave us permission to copy this book and share it in perpetuity. So we have their permission to use that book for forever and ever. And it's actually, they have 2 comic books. One is a general Know Your Rights, and the other one is a Know Your Right for Muslim people, when all the FBI was doing all that horrible harassing Muslim people. Not that they have stopped really, but they calmed down some. Anyway, so we've got 2 versions of the comic book that we can share with you as well. I think all of this is up on our website. We've got ideas for games. You can craft your own. I literally went to the Dollar Tree and bought those little foam balls and made the games for us. Okay. We've got certificates to give people. We've got stickers. One of the things that we do is we have this little, I think I have a picture of it in here. I don't. We have this great little cart that we made up. We got this little wheelie cart thing from Aldi's, and then we put on the 3 sides of it. It's like a little cart that's got like wheels. I mean, it's got like drawers in it, like an art drawer type thing, right? And we covered it in 3 sides with Know Your Rights information and our hotline number and all of this stuff. And then we wheel it around and we have a little game we play with people that we ask them questions about what would you do in this scenario, and do this stuff with the format sets of magic words. And then if they do and we can do this little Know Your Rights 1-minute training with people just by asking them the 3 questions and giving them quick answers. And if they stand there with us for 1 or 2 minutes while they're doing this, we hand them a piece of candy. And then we stick a sticker on them that says, I learned my rights today. It's almost like the I voted today thing, but ours is blue and it says, I learned my rights today. And we will be in downtown Minneapolis wheeling this thing around. And people will come and they'll come and learn it, and then they'll come back 10 minutes later with their friend and say, you got to come learn this stuff. You got to come learn this. We call it the Know Your Rights Mobile, and we have a blast with it. When it's not snowing like it is right now, when it's nice weather, we go out with that thing and we have a blast. People come up to us, and in short time, we'll see just many, many people all over downtown Minneapolis with little blue stickers that say, I learned my rights today. It is a blast, you guys. So there's things that you can do like that as well, that, it's a quick and dirty Know Your Rights. that we do a lot with their street festivals. We always have a booth and we do, quick know your rights trainings at the booth, those 1 or 2 minute trainings, at least for convey. And then we hand them the whole know your rights handout, but we give them the quick and dirty, and then they can move on, but they getting something from that day, So there's lots of ways you can do this stuff, and it's really fun. And we have a lot, and we have all these training materials. If you want to borrow anything, the only thing we don't have, we can lend out within the Twin Cities copies of those videos, but for the rest of you folks, you can just go and download them off of, I think they have them on YouTube, and it's Flex Your Rights, FLEX, Flex Your Rights. And it's terrific. And we've got a list of all these training materials that we can hand you, that we can share with you as well. All righty. Last thing I'm going to talk about is a little bit of what I call classroom management. How do you manage? This is particularly if you're doing this, in person. It somewhat, applies to doing this online. But if you're doing this in person, I like doing circles. I like setting things up with a big U shape or a circle shape so everybody can kind of see everybody else. I don't like the rigid classroom size. Now, sometimes it's no choice because I'm going into a high school classroom and it's already like that. I don't have a choice to rearrange it, but if I can, I'll put people in a circle. I like everybody to be part of everything. So, make sure everybody can see and hear and all of this stuff. Know your AV. This is really important if you're going somewhere else and using somebody else's equipment. Either have somebody there that knows how to use their equipment, or make sure you practice ahead of time. Nothing worse than the AV doesn't work and you got a PowerPoint that you want to use, or you want to show a video or something, and stuff doesn't work. So know your AV, make sure you make appropriate plans for it. In fact, Emma, I want to say thanks to Emma because she has been running this thing tonight. So I didn't have to worry about the tech tonight. That was important to me because I don't want to, it's too much multitasking for me, Okay. A little bit about storytellers. Lots of people want to tell their stories, and that's very understandable. If it's going to be a long story, or I think it's going to, they're going to reveal too much personal information or things like that, I will ask them if I can hook up with them after the training and talk with them about their story. Because I want to answer people's questions, and I want us to be able to give them the value that they came for, but I want to also respect that there's other people in that classroom, and we can't, the stories do inform, like you can't go without them, and you shouldn't try to go without them. But if it's going to be long, then it probably makes more sense to get with that person afterwards and they can kind of thing. All right. Volunteers versus voluntold. A lot of people, like, you don't want to say, I want to pick you out of the crowd. Okay. That's kind of A lot of people get real nervous about that, but people are shy. They don't want to do that. I try to, if I want to use somebody for an example, I usually try to arrange that before the class. Like at the beginning, I'll say, well, I want to talk about, this, like a certain situation. Is it okay if I use you for an example? I try to really do that versus like just, getting people frustrated and embarrassed and things like that. And anyway, I don't want to read you this whole PowerPoint. You guys get the idea about time for questions. And I think that questions, some people really like all the questions at the end. I kind of like them to get woven through because I think it informs and gives you a better class, frankly. But it's up to you how you want to do that. And people that are disruptive, I have rarely had this happen. Most of the people that come to these trainings want to be in the trainings. What I have had is a couple of know-it-alls. Like I had one time I was doing a thing in my in a room where every time I started bringing up a new topic, the guy was like, I want to tell you about it. I want to tell you about it. Right. So I gave everybody a break a little bit into it. And then I sat with that person on the break and said, it's obvious to me, you know a lot about this. I appreciate it, but the other people in the room don't. So let me do this teaching. And hey, I'd love to work with you to be a trainer in the future. I try to kind of manage it, right? You could, back in my day when I was teaching, if I had somebody that was outright disruptive, I could put them out of my classroom, but I really don't like doing that. And I think, if we can manage disruptions, that's better. And, just kind of say, let me teach for a little bit, I'm happy for you to make your contribution, but let me introduce people to the topic first and get through it. And then if you have stuff you want to add, that'd be very helpful. That was how I handled that one person that was like, everything I said, I was like, okay, let other people learn first. I understand that you know this stuff, which made me wonder why they came, except to show off, but I just said, let me train it first. And then if you want to throw in extra stuff, great. And I just managed them. So do you guys have questions? You have not asked very many questions right now.
Taking a lot of notes. Taking a lot of notes.
So what kind of learner would that make you be, Aries? What kind of learner are you then?
You said what kind of learner?
Yeah. Or everybody else can answer the question too. I don't mean to put you on the-
I would say, honestly, I like to believe all the time that, and I say the race to the truth is never ending. So I believe everything is a learning experience. I don't even like when people say that I'm grown, because I tell people, like, if you say you're grown, that means you're not giving yourself space to still grow. I would say,
Oh yeah, you're right.
So,
Right.
so when you say what kind of a learner I am, that question kind of steered me in a way, because I'm like, to me, I'm a life learner. I'm always aspiring to learn more.
Yo, so that's why I vibe with you, bro.
What's that?
I said I vibe with him. I felt this
Yeah.
vibe.
Yeah. No, I think what you're saying is right. I was kind of being a little technical there, and you're probably right not to let me do that. But
I was going to say
looking at
visual learner.
these, yeah,
So-
I would say you're a
so
visual.
can I
and you
just
take
interject?
notes.
Can I just interject? The kind of learner I am. I'm an observer. I'm an observer. I
Okay.
observe from what I see. If I see certain behaviors, like if you tell me one thing and then I see something else different, then I'm going to question. I'm going to question you. So I
Yeah,
observe,
good.
I observe everybody's body language. I'm just an observer of life. I'm an empath. So I see things that other people don't see. So I'm always looking back behind the motives and intent of people's hearts. So when I go into a conversation with
Yeah.
something, I would throw something out there to see who catches it.
Yeah.
You know what I'm
Cool.
saying? And
Cool.
whoever catches it, if it's meant for you to catch, you gonna catch it.
And
You know what I'm saying?
I think that actually speaks to the weakness of this model. This model is helpful for people that are just learning how to train. It's a helpful model, but it speaks to the weakness of that model, that there are other ways to learn. And you're exactly right about that. So yeah, I would agree with you 100%. So cool.
The things I was wondering is, like, when you're taking notes, that's to a certain extent also kinesthetic.
Yes, that's very right.
Absolutely.
That's very right. Back when I was
agree.
teaching, yeah, absolutely. You've got that right, because you're manipulating the pen, and you're, a lot of times people are doodling and stuff. One of the things that back when I was teaching, like medical stuff, I would teach like early students, and we would like have medical terminology class. What I was doing with those students is we would do all kinds of different crazy stuff. Like I would teach anatomy and medical terminology. And I had things like I had a big giant heart on a sheet, and we would walk through that heart and talk about if the blood's oxygenated or deoxygenated, all this other stuff like that, and name the parts of the heart as we're walking through it. Like we'd just move all the furniture in the classroom away and have this big giant sheet in the middle and say, everybody wear your good socks tomorrow, and we do that, right? Because that way people get to get up and not just sit there and, have this boring stuff, right? The other thing is I always had my students make flashcards for their medical terminology, because the people that need to do a kinesthetic activity, the flipping of the card itself is valuable to them. The ones that wrote their own flashcards, when they wrote it, the visuals got what they needed out of it. And then the auditories, we always did everything out loud. So I tried to kind of capture everybody's ways of learning. And we did just a lot of other kinds of, we had a lot of manipulatives in my room. I would always have students do things like, if you're learning the muscles, we'd have a student lay down a big piece of butcher paper, and each team would have do that. And then on one half, they do the front muscles, and the other half do the back muscles, all kinds of things where people get to do stuff. Because man, it's just boring sitting there. Man. I think it's important to get people real engaged. And so I always try to do that when I was teaching. But anyway.
I think also,
Before you go on, do you mind if I ask? So, if that's the case, what was the sense in the way that you meant to phrase the question?
What I meant was I wanted to test whether you all agreed that you were a visual or an auditory or kinesthetic. But the reality is that what you brought to the answer was much richer than this sort of framework, right? The way you framed it out, I loved it. I'm not like, okay, take a test now and tell me, are you auditory, visual, or kinesthetic? You know, this wasn't the purpose of that. It was to try to reinforce that idea, but you answered it in such a neat way that I think it was beautiful. I would not like, okay, well, what does that mean? You know, like I wouldn't have checked you on that. And I wouldn't. And I felt really good about the way you answered it because, you know, what you said was like, this model doesn't actually work for me. It's a good way to frame things up for people who are new to training, to help you recognize that people learn in different ways, but it doesn't capture all the ways that people learn. So I would definitely say that there's a weakness in this model.
But even within that, it's still that's why I'm still taking notes, and that's why I wanted to still learn more, because even within that, like I said, the truth is the race of the truth is never ending. There's still ways when learning how to maneuver within something that might not be maneuverable, if you understand what I'm saying.
I
So
do. And, yeah. And the other
that's
thing
why I
is
think
nobody
that's
is
still
ever
important.
purely one of these. Nobody is ever purely one of these things. We use all of these learning styles and more, as you pointed out, to learn things, right? But this gives people some framework, you
Yeah.
know, but really everybody, you know, nobody's just one thing, right? So that's the thing, is we learn, and it depends on the kind of information too. How you learn math is different than how you learn how to fix a car.
Yeah.
So, you know, that kind of thing. So anyway, we got
Thank
lots
you.
of stuff to help you all do. No, thank you. We have lots of cool stuff to help you be successful at this. We want you to be successful. We're more than happy to share everything we have and then some. So if you need something, you know, you just reach out, because we can, you know, we got a lot of stuff that we can help you with. And if you're in the Twin Cities, we don't mind lending our stuff out either, by the way. So, you know.
Michelle,
Yes, Erica. Yeah.
just wanted to throw out really quick that the different learning styles is also a way to make your training more accessible for people who are neurodivergent. So like
Yes.
has ADHD or someone has autism and they learn in a different way.
Exactly. And, you know, sometimes you can know who you're going to be training ahead of time. A lot of times, if I'm walking into a church or a needle exchange or a food shelf or whatever, I don't know the people that I'm going to be training. I'll have maybe some idea about it, like it's going to be adults and whatever this, you know, whatever. But usually I don't know much about the people that I'm training. And so part of it is to adapt on the spot, you know? Like if you know enough and you've practiced it enough and you feel comfortable with the material, you can adapt the way that you train that material to what you see happening in your environment. And I think that's really important too, is to be a little flexible. Don't go in there like, okay, let me follow. I've got my lesson plan. But by the way, this is my lesson plan. I wasn't lying to you. Big notebooks that I got here, right? You know, I do this, but I'm not going to say, let me stick to my lesson plan. If it's not working, or I need to change things up, or those people can't sit that long and I need to move them around, I'm going to figure out some way to do that. We're not going to just stick to the, you know, because that's how you get people to really learn stuff.
What I've found can be quite handy is PowerPoints, but making them available to people after the fact.
Oh, yeah.
Gary's talked about taking notes, but I know from my own personal learning style and talking to others, I've bumped into this learning style a lot, where taking notes is actually very distracting, because it seems like you're trying to catch everything and not listening. And
Right,
so
exactly.
people who learn like me, I'm better off sitting back, listening and looking at the display, and then later on being able to go through the PowerPoint a second time and then remembering everything. If I was trying to take notes, I would get very little from a lot of the trainings I would sit through.
That's a fact.
Absolutely. And yeah, so of course we could make all of this available to you after the fact, and we will. If you ask for it, I'm going to give it to you, because like I said, we're not trying to be proprietary here. You can change this to be whatever you need it to be, to use it, as long as you give people good advice. And if you're not sure about the legalities, hey, you know what? Tap a shoulder of a lawyer. Lawyers want people to know this information as well. And you could be talking to National Lawyers Guild lawyers or ACLU.
I don't think I disagree with that.
Some lawyers do. Let's say it like
Yeah,
that.
I disagree with that. Yeah, in New York,
I'll check
I
myself
had
on that
different
too.
experiences. And
Yeah,
this is
I know.
what
Some lawyers
lawyers-
are real.
Yeah, like, they're for the
You know.
system. They don't
One
know
of the things that-
The good ones do.
Yeah.
The few
One
good.
of the things, yeah, you're right, the good ones. One of the things that we're kind of known for here in CUAPB is we know who the good lawyers are and who the creepy ones are. And I am able to, I get a lot of calls every
Is
day.
that international?
I need a lawyer for this. What's that?
Is that international or just specific to Minnesota?
Just Minnesota.
So how do we establish what you guys are doing out here in New York? Can you guys help
Guess
us with that?
what? Guess what? We have an actual book to tell you how to do that. We have a guideline, how to create a group. You can't call yourself Communities United Against Police Brutality or use our acronym because both of them are licensed. You know, they're trademarked.
Of course, of course.
And that's because we're all volunteers and we don't want to have ownership or responsibility for people in other areas. We just can't do that. It's not, we don't have a capacity for that. But
Right.
but we teach you how to start a group just like us in your area.
Okay, so and what it was required to get that book?
Nothing. I just send it to you. You give me your email address. That's what's required for that. You know,
Okay.
Dewan, also bear in mind that like CUAPB has existed for what, Michelle, like the 20,
we're in our
30?
22nd year. We're in our 22nd year.
So they've taken a long time to get to where they are.
But
Yeah.
it's okay because it doesn't matter. You can still do this stuff, right? When we started the
No,
organization,
no, hold on a second. I just want to address the young lady just spoke. What's her name?
My name's Erica. I was just meant like the reason that Michelle has so much background information is because so many people have been collaborating for so long. I wasn't trying to discourage you as
No. So exactly what you said. They've been collaborating for so long.
Mhm.
I've been in prison for so long. You know how long I've had this vision for? What we're doing right here? I've had this vision
for a
20
long
years.
time.
For 20 years.
Oh,
20
great.
I've held this vision.
I'm dying to talk to you guys. You just don't know. I cannot wait.
So
I love
it is
knowing
this
people do
year-
this work
so it is
everywhere.
this year that my foundation is going to be created called the Isaiah Foundation. And what this foundation is going to comprise of is 3 compartmental units specifying in criminal, family, and violence, pro-peace. The criminal is going to be based upon wrongful arrests and convictions based upon various factors: police misconduct, prosecutorial misconduct, ineffective assistance counsel, judicial abuse, all that. And then we want to have another separate unit for family, the wrongful separation of families,
mhm.
taking children
That's
away
a
from their
huge
family
issue.
members for no reason.
It is.
Yeah,
Given
it's a
the
huge
resources,
issue.
given the help.
Luckily, there's some very good groups here that do that. I feel like it's also specialized that it's outside of our realm. And also because we have huge police brutality problems here that it's all we can do to manage that piece, right? But
Right.
we also deal with wrongful incarcerations and deal with jail and prison issues here. But we feel like that's as far as we can take it. But luckily, there's very good groups. I don't know if you guys know here locally, Keyless Houston and her work. There's some extremely important work that's being done around child protective services and the separation of families, and particularly Black families and other families of color and stuff. Really, really outstanding work being done here. So we don't need to duplicate that. And that's the lucky part, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
I call it the movement division of labor. You know, there's so much stuff to do that we can divide it. But I mean, I think that if your vision, Dewan, is to do that, I think that's fantastic, you know?
All the more power to you. It sounds like an incredible vision.
You know,
So-
you're looking around what your community needs and you're taking care of it, you know, which I think is
Yes.
fabulous.
So here's the thing. I'm from Chicago.
Hmm.
I came out in New York in 1996, and I've been in prison more times than I care to count. Wrongfully arrested, wrongfully convicted, which started me on my course to want to learn legal research when I was in prison. Then when I came home, I became a certified paralegal, and I've taken on criminal cases from people in prison and got them home.
Wow. That's cool. That's
I've
very
gotten fathers that was in prison visitations with their families when there was a threat of an order of protection.
right. Wow.
Where did you get notice of it? Where is it? You didn't get it? Okay, well, I'm gonna give you a petition for a visitation with your children while you're in prison, and you give that to your attorney.
Yeah.
Let them
Very
produce.
cool.
Let them produce you the order of protection saying that you can't have visitation. They couldn't do it.
Yeah. So see,
So-
you've got specialized knowledge that's really beneficial to your community, and that's really great, you know?
So
You know?
this is why I want to connect with my guy Aris
Yeah.
and institute something like this out here, man. Because I can use his specialized skills, his resources, and we can collaborate. And we can all collaborate because I'm a part of different organizations. You know, it's in New York. It's one called
Yeah.
PLAN, Parent Legislative Action Network, where we actually.
Oh, I love that organization.
Yeah,
God,
I'm a
that's the
part of
best
that organization.
organization.
I'm a part of the organization.
Man, I love that organization. That is a
Part of J.
great
Michael family.
organization. They're fabulous. They're
Yes,
so
thank
good.
you. Yes,
Yeah.
so we've done advocacy work in Albany where I've gave my testimony about the loss of my son Isaiah, and Senator Perkins signed on to the bill for the preservation of family bonds.
Wow. Wow. Dang,
know,
that is so cool. Because I love the work they're doing. We're doing a lot of legislative stuff here right now, especially around no-knock warrants after they murdered Amir Locke. And I did a no-knock warrant bill last year, but they watered it down so bad that it couldn't keep Mr. Locke from being, killed by these murderous bastards. But that's another story. But
Right.
but now it's like, oh no, you're not going to do that this time. Now I'm going to give you the same bill I gave you last year, but it's on steroids now because I put a bunch more stuff. Pretty much, it's like, you know what, y'all? You're not going to get to hardly ever get to do these damn no-knock warrants.
Right.
It's pretty much going to be done. So,
Right.
and I've got that. I've got it passed through most of the committees in the House. It's about to get voted on the floor, and then we're going to have to jam it through the Republican Senate. But that's another story. But that's one of the reasons I want to talk to y'all, because I know that you are working on stuff that we care about a lot, and including qualified immunity and a bunch of things that we're working on here. So, yeah, I'm dying to talk to y'all. You have no idea. So, and so this is what gets my juices flowing, is when I meet people like
Me
you
too,
guys.
me too. I don't get this stimulation conversation with a lot of people. And matter of fact, me and my ex broke up because of this.
Sorry. Sorry.
We broke up because of this, man.
We
'Cause
take
this is
no
my
ownership
passion.
for that. I take
This
no
is my
ownership.
passion, and this is just not something she's with. And
Yeah,
I'm like, I told her, I said, this doesn't have to be your passion. You can do what you do, and I do what I do over here.
right.
But it was draining for her. Yeah, it was draining for her.
Anyway, are y'all feeling like you could do this training?
Yes, definitely.
Cool. What
I'm
about other
excited.
folks?
I'm excited.
Sorry, I don't mean to step on you. Sorry about that.
Yeah, possibly.
Okay.
Possibly.
Okay. If we give you the materials and we help you out, the other thing is that if you live here or if we do it virtually, some of us can help co-teach it. Like, if you're afraid to try it on your own the first time, some of us can kind of help you co-teach it, or just stand by and if you get in the weeds, kind of help you out. So that's another possibility as well. But like I said, we got all the materials. Hopefully all the materials, at least to start yourselves off. If you've got a particular group of people that you're working with that you need different materials, like if you're working with a lot of undocumented material, a lot of undocumented people, we have a lot of materials for that. We wrote the curriculum for the Minnesota Literacy Council, who teaches English as a second language. We wrote the Know Your Rights curriculum for them. So we've got all that. We've got all kinds of materials. And so if you need anything, all you need to do is ask.
Okay, so let me just chime in here real quick. Now, I know from state to state, the writing, the legalese changes, so is this the language that you have incorporated in this book, is this like kind of universal, or?
It's
is it limited?
mostly universal, but like I said, there's certain little things you want to check. Like you want to check, are you required to show an ID if they ask for it? And I don't believe you are in New York, but I could be wrong. I don't live there anymore.
And
I did
so
live
the
there for a
book
while,
doesn't-
but I don't live there anymore.
So the booklet doesn't give you any resources to be able to, for a person to be able to go to research that for themselves.
Well, actually, you can research it for yourself by reading your own state statutes, or you can
But what I'm saying is,
get a
but you
lawyer.
said- but hold on a second. but you-
Find a decent lawyer, like with the lawyers, National
hold on.
Lawyers Guild, a good lawyer.
You're saying state statutes, but we have a lot of people who are laymen, and not even so much laymen. They're very ignorant in this area. So you talking about statutes, they don't even know what that is.
Right, I know, but I mean, so what we want to do is we want to prepare our own material ourselves. So
Yeah, well-
I can send you what we've got. You can adapt it to what you need it to be, because you're a paralegal and you can know and check out some of these areas, right? You know what state
Okay.
statutes are clearly because you're a paralegal. So you can start with ours and you can adapt it, right?
Okay.
To
Okay.
meet your local state statutes. Most of this is universal, but there's a little bit here and there that isn't.
Right.
So,
So
but
because-
mostly it's
because-
like for,
You got to make it case specific to the particular region, the jurisdictions,
well,
what she's
or
saying.
at least to the state, statutes.
Right,
Yeah.
right, that's what I'm saying, to the jurisdiction, to the state, right?
Right, so that's why, and I don't live in those other states. I don't
Right.
know what the laws are
Right.
there. I would lean on you folks to know, like,
Okay.
you know,
Okay, no problem. I just wanted to know what
Florida,
kind
New
of.
York,
I just
whatever the
wanted-
case
I'm
may
sorry,
be.
it was no offense. I just wanted to know what kind of setup.
Oh, no, I'm not offended in any way. No, I'm just saying that
It's
that would
just
be
like-
what we'd ask you to do, is to check out your own local laws and make
Yeah, I
sure.
was gonna say, brother, for that, as far as New York City, we're gonna touch bases, brother. If we from New York, we from New York. As far as we could work on our local
Right, no doubt.
jurisdiction, and as far as what she has with the pamphlet, we could try to make it work toward what we can
That's
work
a
on
fact.
something.
That's a fact. That's a fact.
And
Yeah,
even,
because our
even
stuff's not proprietary. We lend it to everybody.
Yeah,
And if you
okay.
want to, take it and fix it for your own purposes, great.
Okay.
As
cool.
long as you don't tell people bad stuff, bad information, and we're good with it. We don't want you to flip it around the other way and go, do whatever the cops tell you to do. No.
I think we addressed that. I
Something-
think we're all on here, unless there's some infiltrators in here.
Yeah. So you guys, we are all finished for the night, and it's been a long night, so I don't want to keep
Yes.
anybody past their bedtime, so to speak. But
But I'm grown.
happy to
I'm
answer
grown. I
any-
don't have no bedtime.
oh, one shout out to Duan and Aries is beyond just state. You should also think about what circuit you are in. Minnesota's in the 8th circuit,
Yes.
so there's a lot of cases that affect us, and you guys might have other cases in your area to build that thing out on. So keep
Yep.
an eye on that too.
That's a great point. That's a very good point, Andrew. Thank you. Yeah,
Mm.
because the laws are a little bit different in every circuit.
Right.
So, like I said, we're here for you. If you need something, want something, I'm hoping to hook up with all you folks and not, I talked a lot to Duan and Aries, but I want to talk to people in other states too, that you guys are doing this work. We really want to be working with you. One of the things that happens for us is because we do have a hotline that's pretty well advertised, and we've got a huge Facebook, and social media presence, is we get a lot of complaints in other areas of the country. And I have really tried hard to develop a network of people and organizations that we can refer people to in those other areas. And so having those connections is important to us that way as well. So love to be working with you all, seeing what you're doing in your areas, picking up your ideas, sharing ours. This is how we all grow together and how we are going to take on this problem and be successful doing it. So y'all, I cannot thank you enough for being here tonight. I cannot thank you enough for it, and for your
Thank you.
willingness to share this information with the community and be part of what's going on. Y'all,
Mm.
thank you. Thank you so much.
For your time.
Yeah, thank you too. All right, y'all. If you don't have any more questions, I'm going to end it now so as we can all get some rest and get back to what we were doing.
All right,
Where can we find